I learned a long time ago that worrying is like a rocking chair. Gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you anywhere. Write that down.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. Today we're going to be talking about the independent professional High Point Rockers who play in High Point, North Carolina, the furniture capital of the world. Later on in this episode, I'll be speaking with Randy Carfagno of Randy Carfagno Productions, the firm responsible for the creation of the High Point Rockers mascot, Hype the Rocking Horse. And, of course, Dan Simon will be here with one of his Studio Simon stumpers at the end of the episode. Right now, I am so pleased to welcome to the podcast Pete Fish, who is the president of the High Point Rockers. Pete, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning. Doing well. Hope you are.
I am doing very well. We've been talking for about 10 minutes already before we started recording here about ice cream helmets and various teams that you've been involved with over the years. And so it's I'm looking forward to being on the record and having this conversation officially now about the High Point Rockers. We'll get into this a little bit later. I know you've been involved with some high profile minor league baseball team names. You're working with the High Point Rockers right now. How is it that this baseball team came to be known as the High Point Rockers?
Well, not a lot of folks know outside of the North Carolina region that High Point is actually the international home furnishings capital of the world. So this is a long history of furniture, a long history of furniture production. Every year, the international home furnishings market comes to High Point for 2 weeks in April and 2 in October, and it has the impact of a Super Bowl for the North Carolina region. People come from all over the world. They'll stay for a week. They eat, stay at hotels, and so on. So it's been the livelihood and the bread and butter for this community, and so it's only natural that we would be named after a piece of furniture.
It sort of subverts expectations a little bit because you hear Rockers. There have been other teams called Rockers that have a sort of rock and roll theme, or even like, I don't know if there's ever been a Rockers team that had a literal rock, but the expectation is like you hear the name Rockers and you're like, okay, what badass thing is this going to be? And then it's a rocking chair, and it's hilarious and really endearing, and people, I think, really, really like that. I guess there are some teams that might have, said, okay, we're going to be called the Rockers because of the furniture industry, but then the logo might literally represent something else. The idea of doubling down on furniture and making your logo a rocking chair, I think, is really one of the endearing and unexpected things about this logo. What were the conversations around that?
Well, I got here the second season, so they had named the team, and just like you said, they named it after a piece of furniture, but there was a contingent that wanted the theme to be rock and roll, and to kind of push the rocking chair to the side. So the prominent logo that was used was our HP logo, which is for High Point,
Yeah.
and had a baseball kind of shooting out from under it. And it's a great logo. But that could be a high school in High Point. It could be the city of High Point. It could be anything. It
Mhm.
wasn't us.
Mhm.
So I changed our primary logo to be the rocking chair, meaning we use that more. We were trying to sell that as merchandise, put that on uniforms, use that in advertising, because that's our brand. That's who we are. I spent 5 years at Wake Forest University, and they wanted to get rid of they're the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. And they wanted to get rid of the Demon Deacon head, which when they did a survey to people, they said it's goofy, it's creepy, it's crazy, it's cartoonish. But I look at the rocking chair and I say, it's our crazy, it's our goofy, it's our creepy, it's our, whatever you want to say. And that's us. No one else has it. So why not embrace it and make the most of it? You know, it's we don't do alternative logos, because we don't do alternative names for the team and so on, because quite honestly, we're pretty proud of Rockers.
The logo itself, I mean, just continuing this theme of subverting expectations, when you think of a rocking chair, I think of a front porch and lemonade, right? Like, and I don't think of a lot of movement or energy or like something intimidating or forceful. But the logo itself has this rocking chair. First of all, the colors, the primary colors, red, yellow, blue, really pop. It's really energetic. And then it looks to me like this rocking chair has, jet engines on it that are firing behind it. There's a trail of flames behind it, and there's stars against a dark blue sky. Makes it look like it's launching into outer space. What's the thinking there of taking this normally calm item and launching it into outer space?
Well, furniture is what has pushed High Point into the future,
Wow.
and it'll continue to push High Point into the future. And you can look at it just like you did, two ways. It's very, very passive and relaxing, but it's also energetic because that inanimate object is continuing to launch the city of High Point in this region into the future. And this baseball team was serving as a catalyst for downtown development, which it's done a tremendous job at doing. And that's was leading downtown into the future as well. So it's kind of projecting it forward and propelling it into the future.
So this team had a appropriately rocky start, I guess, being founded in 2019 and then, having to weather COVID and then, and then really sort of get going again in 2021. What was that like for you coming on a year after they, were founded and then having to withstand that as a, community baseball team, withstanding COVID and then relaunching essentially in 2021?
Well, I got here the week before COVID started, and I had about 2 days of optimism of what we could do from the momentum of 2019. And then things started to slowly shut down. And we realized it would be a far stretch for us to have a season of any sort. So we kept the name and the brand in front of people by doing hundreds of events at the stadium because we were an outdoor facility that didn't fall into certain restrictions. And we had everything from funerals to weddings to youth baseball with no fans and limited number of players. It was really crazy, but we got through it, and we showed our resilience by pulling it off. And this brand could have the Rockers could have just tanked it after a year and said we tried, but we can't live through this. But this community helped us get through 2020, and we're very grateful for that.
Being an independent professional team, the Rockers play in the Atlantic League. It's different now. It's more different now from minor league baseball, affiliated minor league baseball. I think because of the hostile takeover that MLB, inflicted on minor league baseball, affiliated minor league baseball. There's more freedom, I think, in independent minor league baseball. There's also now more of a commitment, I feel, from independent teams to really up the game with branding and to develop these fun community-based identities, knowing that some of the work that you've done previously, which we'll get into, was with affiliated minor league teams, a little while ago. Is that something that factors into the work that you do, whether the fact that you're an independent team rather than an affiliated team?
Oh, most definitely, because I think the key word was freedom. We don't have to plan a year out. We don't have to get approvals. We don't have to get sign off on what we do. We can basically, if I wanted to change our name tomorrow and do a 1 day, you know, offshoot of our name, I could do it. I could plan our Hispanic Heritage Night name now without having to get any approval. And that's what makes it beautiful. And I don't think independent baseball hasn't changed, but that gap of having that freedom has widened because of the changes to Major League Baseball. So where we used to be on the same par, they could kind of do what they wanted to do, maybe a little bit of approval league wide here and there. And they've fallen back, and we've moved forward with the idea that we can we can make the game fun. We can do what we need to do without having to jump through hoops to get it done.
So, okay, so I've hinted now at the fact that you were involved with some other teams. I was thrilled to learn this when I reached out to you for this interview, and you mentioned, oh, by the way, was involved with a couple of other teams. You mentioned then the Columbus Mudcats and the Hickory Crawdads, who we have featured on this podcast. And then you were the general manager of the team in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, when they became the Warthogs. Those were back in the late 80s, late 90s. I would say the Mudcats name is one of the most important name changes in minor league baseball. I think that one really set minor league baseball on a path of understanding that communities can have their own teams and their own identities and be successful, not have to be named for their parent clubs. We're seeing teams go away from parent club nicknames. I think there are only 10 left now in all of minor league baseball, 10 teams named for their parent club, especially after the Mississippi Braves are now the Columbus Clingstones. Let's chat about that. What is that process like for you being involved in a name change? And I'd love to know sort of what went into that Mudcats name, that Crawdads name, and the Warthogs name. We can take them one at a time, or we could just sort of do a quick
Well,
overview.
probably the one that was the most start to finish was the Crawdads, because
Yeah.
the Crawdads were the Gastonia Rangers, Gastonia, North Carolina. Don Beaver, who owned the team, bought the team. I was the third hire, and we sat around a table. We had cards that our card said Hickory Professional Baseball Inc. and it had a White Sox logo on it because we were a White Sox affiliate. That was our business card. So we did a contest, and like everybody does, we did a contest, and we gathered those names, and we had hundreds of names. And we got a committee of local folks to sit around the table, and we'd go down the list and we'd say, Bobcats. Nah, there's plenty of Bobcats. Cougars. Nah, there's plenty of Cougars. We'd go down there. And I remember when we got to Crawdads, someone said, oh, no way. And then I said, I was just one of the group. I was assistant GM. And I said, let's talk about that one. And well, that's just repulsive. And someone said, and I can't remember who said, let's keep it on the list and we'll discuss it later. Let's not get into the weeds. So we went through, and we had ones. Hickory's a furniture area as well. And I remember one that I thought I couldn't figure out how you would do a logo was the 8-way hand-tied sofa, which is a type of sofa. And I thought somebody submitted that, and I'm thinking, would you put a big couch on the front of your jersey? Not knowing that years later I would put a big rocking chair on the front of a jersey. And we went through this list, and the names we came up with that were finalists were Hound Dogs, Valley Cats, River Rats, Wood Ducks, no, Ruddy Ducks, excuse me, Ruddy Ducks, and Crawdads. So everything had an outdoor animal type feel. And we were sitting there, and I remember our owner said, I remember going in the creek, and I used to pull up those rocks, and I'd grab a crawdad, and you'd get them by the tail, and you'd put them in a bucket, and he'd go find another one. You'd use them for bait, or you'd do whatever. And we kind of thought, well, the kids, summer, the stream, the creek, whatever you want to call it, just good old times that you can't recapture. But what could we do with that? And then our artist started, a guy in Hickory who I think has passed on. He kind of was drawing things, and he had one of these. It looked like a lobster with like 8 arms, and one was holding the baseball, and one was holding the glove, and one was holding the bat, and one was holding the hat. We said, "Whoa, hold on a second. You got to figure out how that's going to work with embroidery." So you think all those things,
Yeah.
and we came up with crawdads, and we took a little key from the Mudcats, where the Mudcats have the catfish coming through the C, and we did the crawdad coming through the H, and then from that evolved the claw logo. That was a couple years later, but we had a lot of fun with it, and when we introduced it, it was a big deal. But one thing I learned is we had a lot of people that would call us and say, that's repulsive. I think that's terrible. It's not a good representation of our area. I hate it. And I hate the logo. And I'd say, sorry about that. And they'd say, where can I buy a hat? They would always finish it with that because they didn't like it. But
Yeah.
now if you go to Hickory and say, do you like the logo? People are going to say, of course, I
Yeah.
love the logo. It's our crawdads.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. As long as it's not politically offensive or personally offensive, If it's just an opinion, then you got something because you want the reaction. Someone said, oh, you could have done bobcats or cougars or tigers, but you don't have a reaction to that. You just say, that's the name, and you move on. And it was about the reaction. Mudcats was the same way, where people didn't, they loved the logo. And I will tell you, whether you're in Columbus, Georgia at the Chattahoochee River, or whether you're in the ponds at Five County Stadium in Zebulon, there are catfish there that as a kid, I'd never seen something that big trying to catch it. So, the catfish has a fighting spirit in it, and it just had, in Columbus, Georgia, we had a fish tank that had a catfish in it. And you could play off that theme so much. When I went to Winston-Salem, the name had been selected from a contest. I got there in October, but it hadn't been designed yet. So we figured, okay, we already got the name. And that came from trying to be unusual. And the North Carolina Zoo, which is about 45 minutes to an hour from Winston, had just introduced a warthog exhibit, and they were causing problems. They were getting out, they were busting through fences and all this stuff. So, and it was just the time of the Lion King with Pumbaa the warthog. So all of this tied together, and we had the same thing where people would say, that's terrible. It's a terrible logo, but where can I get a hat? So we sold more merchandise from November 1st of 94 to January 1 of 95 than we did the previous season, 2 seasons combined. And it was just people wanting to be a part of that and having fun. And we had a fun mascot. And I hated when they changed that name, but it's everything has a life cycle, and the Warthogs was a fun one to be with. So I understand that, it's easy when you hear people don't like it to just say, we're going to change it. We're sorry, we made a mistake. We're getting rid of it. But you weather it, and eventually when you win and when you have some success and people start to comment on it, people start to defend the name and the logo. And it's yours. It's your identity. It's your community. And that's the nice thing with Rockers. When I got here, why they weren't using it, I had someone on staff tell me, well, it presents a geriatric type feel, and we don't want people to think it's just a bunch of old people at our games. I said, it's all how you do it. If you're putting it on certain objects in your merch shop, then it's not cool.
Yeah.
But if you put it on what people want, then it's cool. And we operate the High Point Baseball with the Rockers. We operate as a nonprofit. So we're a nonprofit. So we don't have an ownership group to go to that tells us, micromanages us and tells us, you got to change this. I heard this, and so on. We have a community board. So we are an identity of the community. And I will say this, and I challenge you, and I challenge anybody else. We're the only professional sports team in the world that I'm aware of named after an inanimate piece of furniture.
All right, we've got a challenge out there for everybody.
Someone brought me a European soccer club called the Chair Boys.
No.
But those are the guys who build the chairs.
Right.
Not the chair. And
doesn't count.
High Point used to be in the 20s. They were the furniture makers. They were
Still
the pointers.
Yep.
They were the pointers, which plays off the word High Point.
Yeah.
So there hasn't been anything. I've seen some alternative logos of the couch potatoes and stuff like that, but there's been nothing that's been a piece of inanimate furniture, and it's our inanimate piece of furniture. And
right.
We have rocking chairs throughout the stadium, and it's worked out well.
You're actually getting into something. The last question that I had for you was that you actually have rocking chairs in the stadium. And if I recall correctly from my friend Ed Rivera, who visited you, host of the Dad Hat Chronicles podcast, you have seats from different stadiums. There's like a row of seats from, classic Major League Baseball stadium seats at the ballpark as well.
Yeah, we have in right field, we have what we call the vintage seat section, and it's all seats from some current and a lot of former baseball stadiums. We have seats out there from Fenway Park, Yankee Stadium, Shea Stadium, Fulton County Stadium, Durham Bulls Athletic Park, or Durham Athletic Park, excuse me, the Metrodome, Rosenblatt. You can go down as Candlestick Park, and they were all acquired through auctions or eBay, and they're put out there. And it's really interesting. That's the nostalgic part of baseball, because we have a guy and his wife will come and they'll get a hot dog and they go sit in the Detroit Tiger Stadium seats. And I saw him, and we got talking, and he said, I grew up going to Tiger Stadium. Tiger Stadium doesn't exist. This is like a tie back to my childhood of being able to sit in seats with Tiger Stadium like I did with my dad and eat a hot dog. And it's really cool. And the only one that's tough to keep in shape is the one from Fenway Park is actual wood. And we've painted it, but there's about 50 coats of paint on it. And we just keep painting it every year, and it's an interesting twist to have, this new ballpark that's 5 years old, and one section of it has seats that are 30, 40, 50 years old, if not more.
That is such a great idea, though. When Ed told me about that, I thought it's just brilliant. I have two seats from Veteran Stadium, long since departed Veteran Stadium, that are probably like 20 years old now. They're out here in my basement, and actually, an amazing story. We disassembled them, put them in suitcases, and checked them for free on Southwest Airlines. That's how we got them out here, was taking them apart
Really?
and putting them in suitcases, yeah, and then reassembling them out here, which was that was an amazing adventure. But like every time I see them, I think of that old ballpark. I think of my childhood going to the vet, and it's brilliant. So the idea that you have rocking chairs, that's a great touch based on the logo there. But just as a nostalgic ballpark experience, having those seats from other ballparks is pretty amazing. So I really like that touch quite a bit.
I've been doing this 35 years, and have enjoyed every moment of it. And it's, this industry, you meet interesting people like yourself, and
Uh,
you realize how this game is more than just a business. And I hope minor league baseball doesn't lose sight of that. It's not a business. The business is the byproduct of the sport. But so many of us have memories of where we were when something happened, going with, whether it's our mom, dad, uncle, grandfather, whoever as a kid. And, I got hooked when I went to my dad. I'm from Albany, New York, and the Pittsfield Rangers came and played the Quebec City Metros in Albany in an exhibition. My dad took us, and I was like, I want to do this. I'm in. Count me in.
that's
I
awesome.
was a 6-year-old, just count me in. And it just has so much meaning to so many people, this game. And I think we're fortunate to be a part of it.
Absolutely. Well, I love being part of it through this podcast, and I really have enjoyed getting to talk to you about some classic brands that you've been involved with, and then this brand new one that I think has really been appropriately well received. It's a fun brand. I'm sure I'll be back in North Carolina to see some baseball, so I'll get to a Rockers game at some point. In the
If you
meantime,
find any other pieces of furniture that are team names, let us know, because I have struggled to, and it has to be professional. It can't be
okay,
some,
is
you know,
there
I,
is there a prize for that?
whenever I speak to the Rotary or Kiwanis or civic groups, I always say, I've got $100 in rocker bucks to use at the stadium for whoever can. And very rarely does anybody respond, but I got the one guy that reached out to me about the chair boys. I said, close, I'll give you
Close.
some free tickets, but
Uh,
I'm not giving you the $100.
Pete, where can people find the team and you on online and on social media?
We're at highpointrockers.com. And then High Point Rockers Baseball is most of our social media tags. And I'm pfish52 is you'll find me on Instagram and X and wherever you can find me out there.
Awesome. Pete, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll speak again. You've had so much great involvement with so many great brands out there in the world. I look forward to chatting with you again sometime.
Sounds great, Paul. Thank you.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I'm so pleased to have Randy Carfagno of Randy Carfagno Productions here with me. This is a first for Baseball by Design. We've talked about logo designs. We've talked about uniform designs. we have never talked about the design of mascots. What an important part of the minor league baseball experience. Randy, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning, Paul. I'm doing very well, very, very well. Very excited about being here today and helping out and being the first that you've ever spoken to about a mascot designer. So it's big shoes. We're happy to fill them.
It's it is genuinely true, and it's becoming more true. I feel like at minor league baseball games there are more and more mascots. You've got mascot races. Teams have multiple mascots. I grew up as a fan of the Philadelphia Phillies. I'm still a fan of the Philadelphia Phillies. Obviously, the Philly Fanatic is one of the iconic mascots out there in the world. I believe the greatest mascot out there in Major League Baseball. Anyway, what what is your process? What are the important considerations for you when you're creating a mascot for a team? What's the baseline? Where do you start?
Well, we actually asked the team to do some homework, which is
Okay.
what do they have ideas about? What character they want to push out? What designs do they want to go with? And then we get it, look at it, and then tweak here, tweak there until something is really three-dimensionally as powerful as the Fanatic. And we've actually been building the Fanatic since 1983. There are a couple of little drier periods here and there, but mostly since 1983. But he's a character that over the years did develop, did tweak and change, shift a little bit here and there. So you're looking at a really, really refined, full-fleshed out character. When we start, we get an idea. We have designers who actually sit down and do drawing outs of them. So there's sketches, and then they come to me and say, of this, how do we fit a human into it? So it's a collaboration of the team, of another person who sketches things out, and then us in 3D. Because we do sketches too, but we have other people who are really phenomenally good at mascot character sketches. So they actually do the paperwork design, then we take it to 3D design, which is what you ultimately be seeing. And that's where we really do our hardest work.
You created, and it's the reason that I've asked you to be on this episode. You created Hype the Rocking Horse for the
Yep.
High Point Rockers.
Yes, we did.
This team, obviously, its name is based on furniture.
Right.
You decided to go a different direction with this mascot. How much leeway did you have when they came to you and said, "Okay, we need a mascot"? Did they have an idea of okay, we want an animal, we want a rocking horse, or did they say, "Hey, we have no idea what we're doing here. Yeah, how can you help?"
A little bit of all of it because they did come up with a rocking horse kind of an idea, but then we kind of talked them out of having actual rocking horse rungs at the bottom because trying to turn right or left, you're going to take somebody out with one of those rungs. Loved the idea, but just rather just stay with the horse who just rocks in his own way. So that's why with the hair collars and that kind of thing, it's it's a play on the word of rocking horse because he's rocking as a horse, but he's not a rocking horse as in a child's little toy.
Absolutely. So when it comes to the local community, because right, like that's what this podcast is about, is the
Mhm.
local community here.
Sure.
What are the considerations, when you talk about the name of a team, like this team is called the Rockers because of the connection to furniture making in High Point, North Carolina. What are the considerations? What are the connections that you're making between this character that you're creating and the community?
That's something that is developed. It's not when we first think about the design, we do research on it, but it's more so we have to trust the people who are coming to us have some backstories, ideas. And if not, that's the first thing I tell them is let's come up with a backstory. Who is this character? Where was he found? The fanatic was found in a swamp. This one was found over there. Where was this character from? Because he wasn't existing. Now he's existing. So where did he come from? Did you find him in a furniture store? Did you open up a box you thought was a rocker chair and a horse popped out? So I asked those silly kind of questions to understand what is the character's backstory, critical, and then from there we can make it more 3D. But we need first is a good, strong backstory.
I'm very curious. I have to ask because I am a Phillies fan. What is the nature of the work that you're doing for them? And I've always wondered how many different costumes does a team have? How many actual Fanatic costumes are there?
At present, I believe there's five regular in rotation, five different performers. I didn't say that, but there's a bunch of different performers. And then there's the top one, two, and three, which you'll see everywhere because he's so popular, he's all over the place. So, but they schedule it very carefully so that there's only one Fanatic ever in viewing anywhere. So that way there's only one Fanatic because there has to be only one. So, but that's what that's about. But then just very careful scheduling of multiple characters, multiple costumes. And then he's designed, he's developed, he's all that kind of good stuff. So we do maintenance, reproduction, and things like that for him, so that way he maintains consistency, because you don't want to have the eyes in the wrong place, or not this, or all the different things that could go wrong. You want to have something that's consistent, and that way it's always the same exact look. Years ago, just for character, we did Garfield the cat, and we had to produce 88 character costumes
Right.
of him, and all 88 had to be identical. Because
Hmm.
that way, wherever he goes, whatever he is, it's the exact same thing everywhere.
Wow. I feel like there are sort of two kinds of mascots. One where you have the full body,
Mhm.
like the Fanatic, like your High Point rocker hype, the rocking horse, and then somewhere it's just a guy with something on his head, like say Mr. Met. What is do you have a preference if a team comes to you? It looks just from sort of noodling around on your website, like most of the work that you've done has been with these sort of more full body, the it's a complete creature rather than just a guy with something on his head.
Yeah, but we call those kind of more what we call walk-arounds.
Okay.
And the professional mascots are full head to toe. It's also a price point, because if we come with him a smaller team and they can only spend a certain amount of money, and the bigger boys are a lot more expensive because the furs and the quality of the furs and the dyeing and all the rest of it, that's custom work, costs a lot more. So that's full figure. So if they have a lesser price point, we do not a lesser mascot. It still has the power and the impact, but just a lesser body cover, more of a walk around, because that way it's easier that anybody can wear it. So, because otherwise, with the Fanatic, there are set performers fit to those set performers. No
Oh,
one else wears that costume; it is theirs. Where the smaller teams need to have a bunch of different people to wear it and be able to be comfy in it. So that's why we take it so simpler that way, and just basically pop it on their head versus complete encasement.
I once played I was asked on a volunteer basis to dress as an armadillo. It was the fire department was doing a fundraiser, and they were doing a fundraiser at the Texas Roadhouse. I don't know if that's a nationwide chain or not, but we have one here in Colorado. And I dressed as an armadillo, and my job was to just be out there and interact, and people wanted to take their pictures with me and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
I remember I could not reach my face because I was sweating so much, and I wanted
Right.
to wipe my face off.
Yep.
My nose itched, and getting in and out of the costume was a huge project.
Yep.
To even just like scratch my nose. How much of a consideration when you're building these costumes that people are wearing day in, day out? How do you account for the physical comfort of the people in those costumes?
Well, what I keep telling people when they ask me all the time is, you're not wearing a pair of pajamas. So it's going to be a little uncomfortable. You're going to be hot. You're going to be sweaty. So what we do for those things, we have sweatbands, uh, do rags on your head, because you would have a helmet inside each mascot too, but something to absorb the perspiration, and also for the back of the neck, a cold pack. We use frozen peas, which you tie around your neck to keep your head cool. So that helps a whole lot. They'll last about 20 minutes, half an hour. But we think about comfort and safety primarily, because can you see? Can you breathe? Not going to have down vision. You're not going to have complete peripheral. So what do you do, and who do you need to be next to you to make sure you can walk properly, know what you're doing, and be safe while you're doing it? Because that's the critical thing. First, step one is always performer safety, and then next is public safety, because we don't want anyone to get hurt while they're doing it. I was with one costume company years ago, and the character was in front of me, and he smacked me with his tail, which was part of the gig. It was funny. But then he picked up somebody's a whole front bucket of popcorn, completely full. And
Yeah.
then someone get scored, and he started applauding. Now, of course, rain popcorn everywhere on top of everybody, and they're all hysterical. But that poor person lost a $25 bucket of popcorn,
Yeah.
but they all laughed because it was so funny.
Yeah.
So again, safety, we watch for that, but popcorn won't hurt you. But it just those kind of things, we make sure we're very careful with what you do, how you do it, and that you can do it as cleanly and clearly and safely as possible.
I once read a book called Yes, It's Hot in Here by A.J. Mass. You're smiling. Do you recognize that book? He played Mr. Met, and
Mhm.
it was sort of about his trials and tribulations as Mr. Met and life as a mascot. That must. I saw you smile when I said that. That must ring home with you. Yes, it's hot in here.
Oh yeah, and that because I love when people call up and say, "Hi, we're in Arizona. We want you to build a mascot that's cool." Okay, that's hard. But we did do one for a company in the Virgin Islands. And what we did there was we did 3 layers of mesh, different meshes. It was an iguana kind of character. But since the body was all mesh, it looked like scales. And the performer, she said all she needed was her bikini in it. You could not see through it, but the air blew through it. And she said she could wear it for hours and not sweat at all.
Just in a
So
bikini.
you in a bikini, so you can make it work. It just depends on where. But
That's funny.
and also like the character, the big boys. Again, back to the fanatic. There's bones that create the shape of the body. No matter
Yeah.
what you do, there's a lot of sewing and structure in there. It's architecturally done. Then that has to be a certain amount of structure, which cuts out airflow. And then
Yeah.
the furs cut out airflow. There's nothing what you can do. You do sweat, it's going to happen. I mean, that's why we talk about vodka water and things like that to kill the bacteria smell. But you will be hot, and it's again not a pair of pajamas.
So you're in the business of creating these mascots. Have you ever played in one of the mascots on the field?
Oh yeah, years ago I was a mascot down in Virginia. Worked for Busch Gardens. It was all vinyl dinosaur. Yeah. After that, a little tiny bit. I said, you know what? I'll build them. You wear them. So yeah, I'm a performer in other ways, but mascot work, it's not my thing.
Well, I was gonna, you're sort of leading into my next question here, which is how did you get into the business, this unique business of creating mascots for not only sports teams, but other clients?
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm a puppeteer my entire life. So I've been building and performing puppets my entire life. And in shows that I worked with Bill Baird, we had to build more mascot character elements. So we would build them and then, of course, have to wear them in the show and 9 foot tall creatures and the rest of it. And so I learned how to do it. Then I met another company that said, we need help. So I started working with them and developing more and more and more. That's why I hooked into the Fanatic. And here I am only 50 years in the industry later, we're still doing it.
How has the industry changed over the 50 years that you've been in it?
Oh, it has changed. The biggest change and the hardest thing to face with clients, they always think I'm pulling their leg or trying to get away with something, is the quality of the furs, fabrics, and foams.
Hmm.
They have skyrocketed in the wrong direction.
Hmm.
Prices have gone up unbelievably. Quality has gone down absolutely horribly.
Huh.
The gloves, the fleece we use for the gloves used to be so thick we had to shave it to thin it down a little bit. Now it is so almost transparent. It's that thin.
Huh.
But the quality of that, but the price went up. It's $1,000 a roll now.
Wow.
So it's not like I can cut prices because I can't. My salaries for my crew is up there. So the price has to be remain the same, but the quality is lesser, and there's nothing I can do about it. So it's a really hard way to navigate it all. But we take care of our clients, and if they're unhappy with something, we do all we can to make them happy. But it's like with each one, there's a different little set of conundrums that you have to just work out. But that's part of it.
I've been on the High Point Rockers website. They have a whole backstory here. Bear with me if you don't mind. I'm going to just give a little bit of this backstory.
Sure.
As a young foal, Hype felt out of place in his herd and felt as if his calling was elsewhere. He knew that he was unique. He was the only one in the herd with 12 twinkle-like birthmarks scattered across his face and hooves. While migrating across Wyoming and Montana with the herd, Hype kept searching for his true calling. And then they get into this whole story about how he left the herd and started traveling across the country and hitting all of these sort of baseball themed places on his way to North Carolina. North Carolina, the 12th state. And so that's how come, he's got the 12 twinkle like birthmarks there. A lot of times in logo designs, there's like little hidden elements, like the counter form of a letter will be the shape of a state or something like that. Do you ever put little hidden messages in the design of these characters?
Well, him, in fact, for Hype, what I did, they wanted the front of his nose to have some flavor to it. So I said, how about if we turn the state sideways? So that's what we did. And if you look at it, there down the center of him, his birthmark, as we say, is actually the state turned sideways.
See, I see it now. I'm looking at it now, and I see it now.
Until you know it, you won't see it. And the 12 stars, they were so hard to get. Why do you want so many of these darn things? Because they're really, really hard to do. But we said, oh, I get it. That makes perfect sense. And then we, of course, if the client wants it, we'll do it. And it made perfect sense. So we made them so that way they're all there.
And then all, from the Fanatic down to Hype and, all these other mascots that are out there, they're all wearing jerseys. Are you
Yep.
involved in the creation of these oversized
Oh yeah.
jerseys? Yeah.
Yep. For the
Okay.
most part, we do them. We actually work with the team to get the actual jersey fabric, and that is not easy to get because so many people do rip-off jerseys, and we said, no, we're building the mascot. We have to make it match you guys. So it's a lot of rings to jump through, but then we get that to work, and then we create. There's a material that we cut out. It's an iron-on material to make all their logos. Sometimes the logos are exquisitely designed and have to be embroidered. So those we get from the team because we could do it, but the price point is really way too high. But then we get those, and then we incorporate those in with more of our work. But yeah, we have because you can't just get a jersey and pop it on the character. If you look at the fanatic, he's a pear. Human bodies are not really a pear, so you have to make it fit properly. With Hype, we did all. He's more square, but each mascot is a totally different shape, so the jersey has to be fitted to that exact shape. We did one for one of our other teams that his they gave us the actual jerseys of the actual team. It took 6 jerseys cut apart, put back together again to get one that looked just like when one would wear, but his around his girth is like 90 inches. It's a big boy. So to
Yeah.
get enough fabric from the custom printed jerseys, we had to piece it together till it was exactly that. So yeah, whatever we need to do, we do it to get it looking as accurate as possible.
Amazing. I have one last question for you here, and then I'm going to let you get back to your very busy
Okay.
schedule. And I do appreciate you taking time out for me
Oh,
here.
my pleasure.
On your website, you have a list of quote big head teams,
Yeah.
including the Diamondbacks and the Rangers, the A's, the
And the
Mariners,
Nationals who started it all.
the Washington Nationals are one of these teams in here.
Yep.
So I'm assuming we're talking about the racing presidents here.
Yep.
I went to a game once with my Phillies jersey on, and one of the presidents refused to have his picture taken with me because I was wearing my Phillies jersey.
They'll do that.
These costumes in particular, I know the mascots have to be flexible and they're doing a lot of different things, but the big head ones in particular seem like they're created for, so that they are able to run. What's the consideration for creating a giant head that would allow a human being to maintain their balance while they're running?
A very strong core.
Okay.
Because we first did it, the guys came in and they were worried about their back would bother them a little bit, this, that, and other thing. We have a bunch of different belts and supports in it, so that way their lumbar region and all the rest of it really solidly supported. But then they came back in later and said, you know what, look at my girlfriend loves my new body because he got to support it properly. Core is everything. And that's when you look at it, okay, to bend down it's about 18-pound character to bend all the way down parallel to the ground and back up again. You've got to have a stomach and back really, really strong to be able to do that. So once we understood that, they all start working out that way, and now they can do unbelievable things. And the Nationals do things they should not do, and I tell them, bad boy, but everyone loves them because they're so funny, and they do take a licking. We also did the Ottawa Senators ice skating.
Oh.
And when we first did that, they said, oh, we can't ice skate in these things. Let us try. They tried. They ultimately clocked one of them at going, I'm not joking, 40 miles an hour. But then when he fell, oh my God, the damage. Not to him.
Yeah.
He was in perfect fine shape,
Oh.
no problem. But the mascot was mushed.
Oh no.
But, that happens. But inside the backpack goes up to protect your neck. There's nothing about it. There's foam behind your head, so you have all freedom of movement. So there's no neck injury whatsoever. But we still say, be careful. But 40 miles an hour, face planting. It was hysterical to watch, horrifying to know that somebody's in there, and they got up and did it. But now back to the Fanatic. They had people jump out of a helicopter 16 times in a Fanatic mascot to do one take. So it looked as if he just fell down and jumped out. But a professional, of course, not the regular performers, please.
Right.
Unbelievable the amount of wear and tear and something like that takes on a character costume. So they do come in what we call for spa days, and we make a point. Spa days are only for clients and not for clients, only for the costumes. And so they come in, we wash them, we take them apart, we put them back together again. Aluminum gets rebent, reshaped. If they lost skin, we patch things in, then airbrush and new hair, new whatever, to give them a complete spa makeover. So like through the Wizard of Oz, when they had a puff here and buff there, that's what we do.
I think that the the big head mascot exercise craze is going to sweep the nation here. It sounds like a great exercise plan.
Yep. And we actually had one of the guys who didn't know at that point but he ran a half marathon
Oh my God.
in the mascot, perfectly fine. Then the Nationals had to do it. So Teddy ran a full marathon with four performers that they would come out and then he would change, but each performer ran a quarter of a marathon.
Wow.
And Teddy made it all the way. Oh, that thing was a sweaty old
Oh
mess,
yeah.
but it was just he did it. He made it all the way.
Yeah, I would not want to be the fourth runner putting that
No,
mascot costume on.
yeah, you got to know and love your classmates for that one. But they did it, they loved it, and it was extremely well received because seeing him run across the finish line was really something pretty spectacular. It actually ran the entire marathon.
That's incredible. Randy, thank you so much. This has been so much fun to chat with you. I know that your website is randycarfagnoproductions.com. Is there anywhere on social media or anywhere else that folks
Yeah,
can find you
same
online?
thing. Yep, same thing on Instagram, and we have presence in another too. But Instagram, we update more, and also about my website. Just so you know, it's a teaser website,
Oh,
meaning it's just a little bit of stuff because I have over 70,000 photographs because we've done a lot of work over 50 years, a lot of work. So, and then clients would then say, "I'm looking for this, sort of like that," and then I give them a personal portfolio from our 70,000 photographs, so that way it fits what they're looking for more accurately. And we're always
fantastic.
up for challenge.
Fantastic. Well, those will be in the show notes, so you can go click on that link and find
Okay.
Randy Carfagno Productions on Instagram. Randy, this has been so much fun. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much
Our
for
pleasure,
taking time out of
completely.
your day.
You got
And
it. You stay well.
we'll see you on the ball field.
You got it. Take care, buddy. Bye bye.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I'm so pleased to welcome, as always, my very good friend Dan Simon back to the podcast. Dan Simon of Studio Simon in Louisville, Kentucky. Dan brings a trivia question every single week to this podcast. I'm so lucky to get to talk to one of minor league baseball's foremost designers. Dan, good morning. How are you?
As always, Paul, I am fantastic. How are things in Fort Collins today?
It's a beautiful, sunny day. Fall is here. I'm enjoying the sunshine and the cooler weather. How about you? How about what's it in Louisville? Is it cooling down for you?
Well, interesting that we bring up the fall weather and all that. I walk to and from work twice a day, usually, unless there is foul weather in the forecast. Yesterday, walking to work for the first time since the winter, I was able to see my breath walking, and pretty soon fall will be here in full force.
Before you start, Dan, I'm going to give you a little bit of a stumper, not something to answer right now, but to mull and get back to us. Pete Fish, at the end of our interview earlier in this episode, said that he believes that the High Point Rockers are the only minor league baseball team, or maybe even any team in all of sports, named for inanimate furniture, not furniture makers of any kind or people or anthropomorphic, just inanimate furniture. So I'm going to let you mull that one, and maybe if you come up with one that challenges Pete Fish, I believe he's offering a lifetime supply of ice cream helmets to anyone who proves him wrong.
Did he never hear of the Cedar Lake credenzas?
The Cedar Lake Credenzas, one of the most imposing nicknames out there.
Okay.
The Ann Arbor Armoires.
We can go and we can go on, but let's go on to our stumper. Okay, so you mentioned not named after furniture makers. Did you know that from 1920 to 1922, the minor league baseball team in High Point, North Carolina, was named the High Point Furniture Makers?
Yes, that's something that came up in the conversation with Pete.
Okay, well, let's see if something else came up regarding former teams in High Point, because after that 22 season, the team in High Point changed the team name and played a name by which they played from 1923 to 1932, their new name. So our Studio Simon Stumper today asks, what was that team name? Was it A, the high point setters? Was it B, the high point pointers, or C, the high point high hos?
What is that? What is a hi ho?
You would have to ask whoever may have named the team that.
I believe, Dan, that I know this one from actual human knowledge without having to suss. I believe it was the Pointers.
Final answer?
It's my final answer. I'm not 100%, but I feel like Pointers is the answer. I don't think it was the high hose. I don't think it was the high point setters. Like is that like a poinsettia, like the Christmas flower?
We'll get to what that is when I
Oh, I see. Okay.
answer your question.
All right. I want to say the Pointers. I'm going to say the Pointers.
Okay. Get your W flag and raise it up and fly it proudly because you're back in the win column.
Back in the win column, off the schneid.
Okay. Now, with regard to your question about setters, the reason I did that is because isn't there a dog called a point setter?
I think there is. Yeah. We'd have to ask Ranger Amy to be sure.
That's right. Now check this out. My sister went to law school at Pace University in New York State, and their athletic teams are known as the Pace Setters,
Of course.
which is a pretty clever name, but the dog is a setter. Now, if it's not a points, I think it's a point setter, but there are also iris setters. Now, with regard to pointers, I'm just assuming, and I have no basis of no knowledge about this, but I'm assuming when the high point team named themselves the Pointers, it was just because they have the word point in their name. Whether they had a dog in their logo, I don't know. But my good friend, and who I have mentioned on this podcast several times, Joe Bosack, did the brand identity for the University of Wisconsin Stevens Point Pointers. And that logo is a dog, a pointer. So there are pointer dogs. So, we're talking about a team that played from 1923 to 1932. Who knows, somewhere out there could be something with a logo on it. Would love to see what their logo might have been.
That would be fun. Logos weren't necessarily real typical back then necessarily. They would just typically sort of wear a ball cap and put the name on the jersey, but not necessarily have like a, what we would consider a logo today. So
yeah, oftentimes there was no character or person or object or anything. It would, keep in mind, back in those days, to get a logo, let's say on a baseball cap and certainly on a jersey, it was a piece of felt that was cut out and sewn on, probably maybe even by hand. Although they had, even if they weren't electric sewing machines, they had foot powered sewing machines. But it was felt fabric cut out and sewn on. So things had to be really, really simple. So if you had, I can tell you here in Louisville, where the team was the Louisville Colonels, oftentimes it was just kind of, if you took the square serif L from the Los Angeles Dodgers cap, for instance, that was, oftentimes what the logo was here. There was also a script logo, but again, it was a really simple script L that can be easily cut out of felt and sewn on. So, and for sure, they weren't selling merchandise back then. I remember when, and maybe I talked about this on the podcast, when I was on a trip to San Francisco in 1978. When we were in San Francisco, we went to a doubleheader at Candlestick Park, and I wanted to get a cap. Couldn't get one at the ballpark even. And so we finally found some place in the city where I was able to get a Giants cap, but merchandise was not even a consideration, especially for minor league teams back in the 1920s and 30s. So logoed merchandise was not on their minds. And so they just needed something that somehow indicated where they were from or who they were. And it was oftentimes just a single letter cut out and sewn on. So,
Dan, before I let you get out of here for the week and get back to your busy schedule, I'm dying to know what the high hos were.
I just made that up because I thought it sounded good. The High Point High Hos. There is a team in, I believe it's in this very same area as the High Point Rockers, called the High Toms, and it's HI-TOMS, High Toms, and I believe it's High Point and Tompkinsville, which is like the neighboring, like Scranton Wilkes-Barre,
Oh, yeah.
These sister cities or whatever you want to call them. And so they're called the High Times. And I remember the first time I saw that, I was thinking, what's a high time? I later learned it was a shortening of the city or town names there. So the High Ho's, who knows, just sounded good. I think there should be a team like hi ho, off to work we go.
Right,
Maybe
right.
it's very small workers.
Well, I hope that they would be in the same league as the Ann Arbor Armoires and the Cedar Rapid Credenzas. So, Dan, as always, thank you very much. Go find Dan on Instagram at studio_Simon. Dan, thank you very much. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you next week.
I'm looking forward to having some more fun with you then, Paul. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, Dan.